Alright, so for the final review, we're going to go back all the way to chapter 1. This one is having me set up some equations to solve it. It says to help sell more of a lower grade meat, a butcher mixes some premium ground beef worth $3.10 a pound with 8 pounds of a lower grade beef worth $2.05 a pound. If the result was an intermediate grade of ground beef worth $2.68 a pound, how much premium grade was used? So this is a mixture problem. I have 3.10 of an unknown quantity, which is going to result in 3.10y. Then I have 2.05 for my price for the lower grade beef, and the lower grade is 8. So I'm going to have, this one is going to be, remember I multiply across, so I'm going to have 2.05 times 8, which gives me 16.4. Then my totals are, the final cost is going to be $2.68, and I'm missing the total amount of beef. Oh no, I'm not. It's y plus 8. And then what I do is I'm going to take 2.68 times y plus 8. So that's going to be 2.68 times y plus 8. And that gets me 2.68y plus 2.68 times 8 is 2144. So what I want to do is I want to set it up so that I have an equation. I'm going to add the column to equal that. So I have 3.10y plus 16.4 equals 21.44. What I first want to do is I want to start off by subtracting 16.4 from both sides. I get 3.10y equals 5.04. Then I divide both sides by 3.10, and I have 5.04 divided by 3.1, which gives me this, which I'm going to round to just 1.6. Number 2 wants me to divide. What I have to do is I have to multiply by my complex conjugate. Basically what that is I take the divisor and change the sign in the middle. So I'm going to multiply both the top and bottom by 5 plus 2i. On the top, I'm going to FOIL. I have 4 times 5, which gives me 20. 4 times 2i, which gives me 8i. I times 5, which gives me 5i. I times 2i, which gives me 2i squared. On the bottom, I have 5 times 5, which gives me 25. 5 times positive 2i, which gives me 10i. Negative 2i times 5i, which gives me negative 10i. Negative 2i times positive 2i gives me negative 4i squared. And I want to go ahead and simplify by combining like terms. So on the top, I have 20. 8 plus 5 is 13i. I squared, remember, is negative 1. So I have plus 2 times negative 1. On the bottom, I have 25. My 10i's will cancel out. Minus 4 times negative 1. Then I want to combine or multiply. I have 20 plus 13i. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. On the bottom, I have 25, and negative 4 times negative 1, which gives me positive 1. This had an I. Then I want to combine like terms and simplify. So I have 20 minus 2, which gives me 18. On the top, I have, over here I had 4. I don't know why I keep making mistakes. On the next one, I have 18 plus 13i over 29. And then sometimes it has you split it up. You always have the real part first, which is the part without the I. And then I have 13 over 29i. Okay. Number 3 wants me to solve for v. What I want to do here is I want to get all of my terms on the same side. I'm going to add 3v squared to both sides. On the left, I end up with 0. I have 3v squared minus v minus 2. What I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to use the AC method. Remember, that's the one where I find my coefficients. A is 3, b is -1, c is -2. So AC is 3 times -2, which gives me -6. So I'm looking for what multiplies to -6 and adds to -1. It's going to be -3 plus 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split up my v term into those. So I have 0 equals 3v squared. And I'm going to have minus 3v plus 2v minus 2. Then I want to go ahead and split these up so I can factor by grouping. In my first group, I have 3 v's in common, so I'm going to divide out 3 v's on both parts. I still have 0 equals 3v goes outside. 3v squared divided by 3v is v. Negative 3v divided by positive 3v is -1. Over here, I'm dividing out 2. I have plus 2. And then 2v divided by 2 is v. -2 divided by 2 is 1. Then what I want to do is I want to do the opposite of the distributive property. So I'm going to put the two outside pieces together. I have 0 equals 3v plus 2 times v minus 1. Notice these were the same piece, so those go right there. Then I'm going to take each of my pieces and set equal to 0 and solve them. On the first one, I subtract 2 on both sides. I have 3v equals -2. Divide by 3. V equals -2/3. Over here, I add 1 to both sides, and I get v equals 1. Number 4 wants me to use the quadratic formula to solve. Remember, that is x equals -b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. Then what you want to do is figure out a, b, and c. So here my a is 3, my b is -2, and my c is -3. So I'm going to go ahead and plug into that formula. I have x equals negative, my b is -2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -2 squared, minus 4 times my a value of 3 times my c value of 3, over 2 times a, which was 3. Then I want to do my multiplication. So I have -2 turns into +2. -2 squared turns into 4. -4 times 3 is -12. Times 3 is -36. 2 times 3 is 6. Then I want to simplify inside the radical. So I have 2 plus or minus 4 minus 36 is -32. Still over 6. So because it's negative, that means I'm going to have to take out an I. And then what I want to do is I want to see if I can simplify this radical. It's not a perfect square, but I'm going to use a factor tree to figure out if it is. So I have 32. Factors to 2 and 16, 2 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So I'm looking for groups of pairs of numbers. I have 2 sets of 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. So I have that on the outside. Then I have this loser 2 that didn't get circled. It stays on the inside, over 6. Then what I can do is I can split it into 2 fractions. I have 2 plus or minus 4i square root of 2, and both of those are over 6. I can simplify them each. 2 and 6 are both divisible by 2. I get 1/3. 4 and 6 are also divisible by 2. I never change the radical unless there is a radical on the denominator. So that part will stay the same. But 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3 for my final answer right there. Right, so for number 5, it gives me 3 lines and they each have 2 coordinate points. It wants me to find the slope of each line. Remember, slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to find the slope of line 1 first. To do that, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to label my points and then I'm going to plug them into that formula. So I have m equals 1 minus negative 4 over 0 minus negative 3. I'm going to want to simplify. 1 minus negative 4 is the same thing as saying 1 plus 4, which is 5. 0 minus negative 3 is the same thing as 0 plus 3. So that's 3. I'm going to do the same thing for line 2. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. So line 2. I have 4 on top, minus 0, and then on the bottom, negative 4 minus 0. I want to simplify that. 4 minus 0 is 4. Negative 4 minus 0 is negative 4, which gives me negative 1. I'm going to do the same thing for line 3. And this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to have 6 minus 4 over 3 minus 5, which simplifies to 6 minus 4 is 2. 3 minus 5 is negative 2, which can be simplified to negative 1. B wants me to decide if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. For line 1 and 2, if I look at these are completely different numbers. They're not opposite reciprocals. They are opposite signs, but they also need to be opposite reciprocals to be perpendicular. To be parallel, they have to be exactly the same, so line 1 and 2 are neither. Line 1 and 3, same kinds, they're completely different, also neither. Lines 2 and 3 are exactly the same, so they are parallel. So let me just write notes. Same slope. Perpendicular is opposite reciprocal. Number 6 wants me to use the graph to determine the behavior of the function between the points. So if I am looking A and B, it is constant. I should have also highlighted this piece. B and C is positive. Oops. C and D is constant. And D and E is going down, so it's negative. Number 7 wants me to graph the line. This is given in point slope form. So what I can do here is I can graph my point. It's going to be, remember, this is y minus h and plus h minus k. So what I can I mix those up. H and k go with the other letters. H always goes with the x value and k goes with the y value. Okay. So opposite the sign would be negative 3. Same sign would be 4. This is a point on the line, negative 3, 4. And then this number out front, 1/3, is my slope. So I'm going to go up 1 over 3 and connect those with a line. Number 8 wants me to find the average rate of change for those two values. Basically what that is doing is finding the slope between those two values. So I want to plug in x and find out my f of x for those values. So f of negative 3 is 2 times negative 3 squared minus 3. If I go ahead and type this into my calculator, I have 2 times negative 3 squared minus 3, which gives me 15. I'm going to do the same thing for f of 1. I have 2 times 1 squared minus 3. 2 times 1 squared minus 3 gives us negative 1. Okay, so looking at this is my x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to plug these into my slope formula. I'm going to have negative 1 minus 15 over 1 minus negative 3. 1 minus 15 is negative 16. 1 minus negative 3 is the same thing as 1 plus 3. So that gives me 4. Negative 16 divided by 4 gives me negative 4. Okay, number 9 gives me a graph. It wants me to translate it to make it into the graph of y equals the square root of x minus 2 plus 4. This x minus 2 is going right 2, plus 4 outside of the square root is up 4. So I'm moving this dot to the right 2, up 4, and then it just continues on to the same pattern. Number 10 is giving me two functions, and it wants me to find function operations. For this, it has r of x equals 2x plus 5 and s of x equals x minus 3. The first part wants me to find r minus x. So I'm going to do 2x plus 5 minus x minus 3. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and distribute into the second set of parentheses. So I have 2x plus 5, that didn't change. Negative times x is negative x. Negative times negative 3 is positive 3. So for r minus s of x, I want to combine like terms. I have 2x minus x equals x. 5 plus 3 is 8. B wants me to multiply the two equations together. So I'm going to have 2x plus 5 times x minus 3. What I want to do here is FOIL. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Then I want to combine like terms. I have 2x squared. Negative 6 plus 5x gives me negative x minus 15. Then for C, it wants me to evaluate the function, and I am doing addition here. So I want to find r plus s. So on this one, I'm adding the two together. So I have 2x plus 5 plus x minus 3. I want to combine like terms. 2x plus x is 3x. 5 minus 3 is 2. So I have r plus s of x equals 3x plus 2. This equation wanted me to evaluate for negative 2. So I am going to replace the x's with negative 2. 3 times negative 2 plus 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 plus 2, which gives me negative 4. Okay. This one gives me two functions, and it wants me to do composition. Remember that notation means I'm plugging in. So Q of P of 4 means I am taking the equation from P, plugging that in for x, and then I'll be plugging in for the x's. So first I'm going to start by rewriting this. So I have square root of, and then I'm plugging in x squared minus 3 minus 2. I want to rewrite that. It's just the square root of x squared minus 5. Then I want to go ahead and I want to plug in that 4. Oops, not an x there, 4 here. then I have the square root of 4 squared minus 5, which is the square root of 16 minus 5, which gives me the square root of 11. On B, I'm doing it in the opposite order, so I'm going to be plugging in Q for this X for P. Okay, since I have a square root inside squared, those will cancel out. So I'm left with x minus 2 minus 3, which simplifies to x minus 5. Then I want to plug in 4. Four minus 5 is negative 1. Number 12 is having me do division with my two functions. It wants me to find f divided by g of x, and then b is find the values that are not in the domain. So to find f divided by g of x, I literally divide the two functions. There's nothing to cancel out or simplify, so this is my final answer. B wants me to find all the values that are not in the domain of 0. This is where I take the denominator and set those equal to 0. So then I have x minus 2 equals 0. X equals 2 is not in the domain. And I do the same thing for x plus 4. X equals negative 4 is also not in the domain. Okay, number 13 gives me this function. It wants me to decide if there is a maximum or minimum value here. What I do is if it's positive, which this one is, it's going to be U-shaped. So it's going to have a minimum value. Then it wants me to find the function's maximum or minimum value and where it occurs. So B is looking for the y value, C is looking for the x value. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to solve for C first and then go back and find B. Remember to find the maximum or minimum value. This is going to be, for the x value, is x equals negative b over 2a. It's going to give me the x coordinate of my vertex. If I look back at my function, 4 is a, negative 8 is b, and 7 is c. So if I plug those in, I have x equals negative 8 over 2 times 4. Negative 8 gives me positive 8. 2 times 4 gives me 8, which gives me 1. So my maximum value occurs at x equals 1. Then to find the minimum. Then to find the minimum value, I'm going to take the 1 and plug into that equation. So I have g of 1 equals 4 times 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 7. I can do this by hand, or I can type it in the calculator. I am going to type it into the calculator. So I have 4 times 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 7, which gives me 3. Okay. This one gives me the polynomial, and it tells me one of my zeros is 9. It wants me to express it as a product of zeros. So what I need to do here is I need to factor it some more. Since I already know one of my zeros, I'm going to use synthetic division here. So to do that, it tells me 9 is my zero, so that gets written outside. Then I'm going to write my coefficients of the polynomial inside. I have 1, negative 10. There's no x squared term, so I'm going to write a 0 as a placeholder. 90, negative 81. Okay, so to do synthetic division, my first number always goes straight down. I wrote that 9 a little low. Then I'm going to do 9 times 1, which gives me 9. Negative 10 plus 9 is negative 1. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. 0 minus 9 is negative 9. Negative 9 times 9 is negative 81. 90 minus 81 is 9. 9 times 9 is 81, which gives me 0, which means this worked out. Okay. If I look at my coefficients, I can rewrite this. I'll have x cubed, because remember I always start one exponent less than where I began at, minus x squared minus 9x plus 9 equals 0. Then what I can do is I can factor by grouping. So if I take a look, I split these into these two groups. My first group can take out an x squared. I have x squared times x minus 1, because x cubed divided by x squared leaves me with 1x. Anything divided by itself results in 1. In the second group, I want to make the leading term positive, so I'm going to divide by negative 9. And they both have 9s, so I'm going to take that out. Negative 9x divided by negative 9 gives me x. Positive 9 divided by negative 9 gives me negative 1. Still equals 0. Then what I want to do is I want to rewrite my outside pieces of this together. So I have x squared minus 9 times x minus 1. I can factor this more. I'm looking for what multiplies to negative 9 and adds up to 0. That would be positive 3 and negative 3. So I'm close to having this as my product of zeros. Remember, I'm missing my 9 is a 0, because that is saying x equals 9. That's the same thing as saying x minus 9 equals 0, because I have to subtract it to move it over. So I'm going to throw back in my x minus 9 that I divided out. X plus 3, x minus 3, x minus 1. And that is my factored answer. Okay, number 15 gives me a graph of the polynomial function with real coefficients. It wants me to use the graph to answer the questions. It is asking me where it's decreasing, so that's where it has a negative slope. So it starts at negative 9, and then that line I highlighted ends at negative 6. They get curved parentheses because it's at a vertex where it can also be increasing on the other side. Okay, it's going to be unioned with. This one starts at negative 2 and ends at positive 2. This one starts at 6 and ends at positive 9. Okay. The function has local minima at which x values, so these are my low points here. The x values there are x equals 6. This one is x equals 2. Oh, this one was negative 6. And this one is x equals 9. Okay. This one wants to know what the sign of the leading coefficient of f is. It starts in the bottom and goes up, so that's a positive function. Remember, positive odds do something like that. Positive odd. Positive evens look like U's. Negative odd looks something like that. Negative even looks like that. Okay, it wants me to find the possible degree of f, so what I need to do is count how many turning points I have. I have 3 that I circled, and then I have 1, 2, 3 more, which is 6 turning points. My possible degree is always one more than that. So I have 7th as my possible degree. Number 16 wants me to graph the rational function. What I first want to do is I want to find my asymptote. So I take the denominator and I set it equal to 0. Then I want to actually solve. So I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. And I get x equals -2. That means I'm going to have a dashed line there. Okay. Then since my exponent is higher on the numerator than the denominator, I want to go ahead and do division to find my slant asymptote. I'm going to do that by doing synthetic division. So I'm going to have -2, 1, 3, and 3. I bring down the 1. 1 times -2 is -2. 3 minus 2 is 1. And then 1 times -2. So I don't care about the remainder, but I will use this to rewrite my equation. It's going to be x plus 1. To graph this line, I go up 1, I put my dot, and then my slope is 1 over 1. So I put my second dot. Oops, this was an asymptote. Should be dashed. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to find my 0 for the numerator if possible. So if I plug in 0, I have 0 squared plus 3 times 0 plus 3. That gives me just 3. So that means I have a y-intercept at 3. Because this is inside that triangle piece, that means this piece of my graph is going to curve like that. So on this side of the vertical dashed line, this is what that graph is going to look like. I need to figure out on this side if it's going to be in the top or bottom piece. So I need to pick a number less than -2 to plug in. I am going to pick -3. And I plug it into the whole equation. I have -3 squared plus 3 times -3 plus 3 over -3 plus 2. -3 squared is 9. Positive 3 times -3 is -9 plus 3. -3 plus 2 is -1. 9 minus 9 cancels out. I have 3 over -1, which gives me -3. So my coordinate point is -3, -3, which is inside the triangle piece again. So it looks kind of like that. Number 17 gives me functions f and g and wants me to find the composition to decide if they are inverses of each other. So first it wants me to find f of g of x. That means I'm plugging this in for that x right there. F of g of x is going to be 3 over x. Then what I can do is rewrite this. I have 3 divided by 3 over x. Sorry. So the original 3 is over a secret 1. So I can rewrite it as 3 over 1 times x over 3. My bad. Then the 3's will cancel out. So I have f of g of x equals x. That's what I want for it to be an inverse. So now I need to go do the same thing for g of f of x. It works the same way because they are the same equation. So I have, this time I have 3 over x, which will give me 3 over 1 times x over 3, which gives me x again. So this one is inverses. B will work the same way. So when I find f of g of x, I'm plugging this in up there. So I have negative, and I'm plugging in x plus 2 plus 2. This simplifies to negative x minus 2 because I distribute the negative sign, plus 2 equals negative x. Because it's not a positive x, I can already tell this aren't inverses. I'm going to do the same thing for g of f of x, except this time I'm plugging into the bottom equation. So I have negative, and then I'm plugging in, oh no, that one's not the negative. I'm plugging in negative x plus 2 plus 2, which simplifies to negative x plus 4. Okay, number 18 wants me to solve for x. 27 and 81 are both powers of 3, so I want to rewrite those. 27 is 3 cubed. 81 is 3 to the 4th. I want to multiply my exponents on the left side. So I have 3 to the 3x plus 6 equals 3 to the 4th. Now that my numbers have the same base, I can take my exponents and set those equal together to solve. I have 3x plus 6 equals 4. Subtract 6 on both sides. 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3. X equals negative 2/3. Number 19 wants me to solve for x. Since this is written as a log base, I'm going to turn it back into an exponential equation. I have 3. Remember this one, the number on the right side of the equation is my exponent. And then 4x plus 1 is what it equals. 3 squared is 9. 4x plus 1. I subtract 1 on both sides. I get 8 equals 4x. Divide both sides by 4. X equals 2. Okay. Number 20 wants me to solve for x. What I want to do here is, since I have 2 logarithms, I want to get them on the same side of the equation. So I'm going to add log x minus 3 to both sides. On the right, I have log x plus log x minus 3 equals 1. Then I want to use logarithmic properties to rewrite the left side. So to do that, I multiply because there's a plus sign in between. So I have log, then I'm going to have x times x, minus 3. Equals 1. I'm going to re-multiply. I have x squared minus 3x equals 1. When I have log written without a base, it's assumed to be 10. So I'm going to rewrite this as an exponential. I have 10 to the first power. The one came from the right side. Equals x squared minus 3x. 10 to the first power is the same thing as 10. So I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. I have x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. I'm looking for what multiplies to negative 10 and adds up to negative 3. It's going to be negative 5, positive 2. I take each of those pieces and I set them equal to 0. X minus 5 equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0. and I want to solve them. I add 5 to both sides. I get x equals 5. Over here I subtract 2. I get x equals -2. Because I'm working with logarithms, I want to be sure that these all work. So I want to go back and plug them in. When I go to plug in these, I have, why did I do that? I have log 5 equals 1 minus log 5 minus 3. That rewrites as log 5 equals 1 minus log 2. That's positive. That one works. And I have log -2 equals 1 minus log -2 minus 3. I can already see this logarithm is negative. I can't take logarithms of negative numbers, so this one is not an answer. My only answer here is x equals 5. Okay. This one wants me to solve the following system of equations. I can use any method I want. I am going to use elimination, and I'm going to cancel out my y's. Both 8 and 9 go into 72. So I'm going to multiply this one by 9 and this one by 8 because my y's already have opposite signs. 9 times -7 is -63. 9 times 8 is -72y. 9 times 9 is 81. On the bottom, 8 times -4 is -32. 8 times 9 is 72. 8 times -22 is not one I know off the top of my head. -176. Then I want to add straight down. -63x minus 32x gives me -95x. Y's cancel out. And then 81 minus 176 gives me -95. I divide both sides by -95. I get x equals 1. Then to solve my equation, I plug back into either one. I am going to plug into the bottom one just because I like working with 4 better than I like working with 7. So I have -4 times 1 plus 9y equals -22. -4 times 1 is -4. Then I want to go ahead and add 4 to both sides. I have 9y equals -18. Divide both sides by 9, and I have y equals -2. My coordinate point is always xy, so I have 1, -2. Number 22 wants me to solve the following system of equations. It's in 3 variables, but lucky for me, my first equation is in 1 variable only. So I'm going to go ahead and start by solving that one. I have 3x equals 6. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. I get x equals 2. I'm going to take that and plug into my second equation, which has 2 variables, one of which is x. So I have 4 times 2 minus y equals 3. 4 times 2 gives me 8 minus y equals 3. I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. I have -y equals -5. Divide both sides by -1. Y equals 5. Then I'm going to plug x and y into my last equation to solve for z. So I have 2 plus 5 plus 2z equals -1. Then I want to go ahead and solve. 2 plus 5 is 7. Then I subtract 7 on both sides. 2z equals -8. Divide by 2. Z equals -4. So my answer here goes x, y, z, not 3, 2, 5, -4. Okay. Number 23 is scalar multiplication. all I have to do is multiply each of my terms by -3. So I have -3 times -2, -3 times 5, -3 times 3, -3 times 1. Then I multiply those all. I get -3 times -2 is +6. -3 times 5 is -15. -3 times 3 is -9. And -3 times 1 is -3. Okay, on 24, my computer printed it out on this page. On yours, when I save it as a PDF, it'll be on the other page. So I'm going to flip this over, and then I will write my matrices above. I have A equals 2, -4, 1, 5, and B equals 3, 4, -7, 0. Okay. Like I said on your page, this will be on the right side. My first one wants me to do matrix multiplication. Sorry, matrix multiplication between A and B. So it means I am going to take my rows of A and multiply with my columns of B. So I have 2 times 3 minus 4 times 4. Then for the second position, I have this row with this column. I have 2 times -7 minus 4 times 0. Then for this one, I have this row with the columns. I have 1 times 3 plus 5 times 4. Then over here I have 1 times -7 plus 5 times 0. Then I want to do the multiplication. I have 2 times 3, which is 6. -4 times 4, which is -16. 2 times -7, which gives me -14. 4 times 0, which gives me 0. 1 times 3, which gives me 3. 5 times 4, which gives me 20. 1 times -7 gives me -7. 5 times 0 gives me 0. Then I want to combine like terms. 6 minus 16 gives me -10. 3 plus 20 gives me 23. -14 plus 0 gives me -14. And -7 plus 0 gives me -7. For B, it wants it to go in the opposite order. I'm going to write these off to the side because whenever I do them in the opposite order, I mix them up if I don't rewrite them. So I have 3, -7, 4, 0. And then I have 2, 1, -4, 5. So this time I'm doing these rows with these columns. I have 3 times 2 minus 7 times 1. Then I have 3 with this column, -4 minus 7 times 5. Then I'm doing the bottom row with these columns. I have 4 times 2 plus 0 times 1. Over here I have 4 times -4 plus 0 times 5. Okay. Then I want to simplify my multiplication. 3 times 2 is 6. -7 times 1 is -7. 3 times -4 is -12. -7 times 5 is -35. 4 times 2 is 8. 0 times 1 is 0. -4 times 4 is -16. 0 times 5 is 0. Okay, then I want to combine my terms again. 6 minus 7 gives me -1. -12 minus 35 gives me -47. 8 plus 0 gives me 8. -16 plus 0 gives me -16. Then for C, it wants me to find B squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out B twice so I can keep track of what I'm doing. I have 3 times 3 -7, 4, 0. And then I have 3, negative 7, 4, 0. So I'm going to multiply this row with this column. I have 3 times 3 minus 7 times 4. 3 times negative 7 minus 7 times 0. And I'm going to use the bottom row with the columns. So I have 4 times 3 plus 0 times 4. Then I'm going to take this with this. I have 4 times negative 7 plus 0 times 0. Okay. Then I am going to do the multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. Negative 7 times 0 is 0. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 0 times 4 is 0. 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. 0 times 0 is 0. Then I just want to add. 9 minus 28 is negative 19. Negative 21 plus 0 is negative 21. 12 plus 0 is 12. Negative 28 plus 0 is negative 28. So this is my final answer.